tradition this day and age to read any good news on the newspaper page. And love and tradition of the grand design, some people say is even harder to find.
All right, guys, season 2 of All Things Real Estate.
That's right. Is this episode 1 or 2? I haven't been on an episode now for like 3 or 4 times.
I know. This is episode 2. So season 2, episode 2.
Cool.
Three.
Yes.
We don't even know.
Episode 3.
We did 1, 2 with Aaron, and now we're...
Man,
All right,
we're
let's
rolling.
do it.
All right. So again, second season of All Things Real Estate.
Congratulations, guys. Absolutely
Yeah.
awesome.
And thanks to our millions of listeners out there.
And our 100 subscribers.
No, but you know what's been interesting is I've started to look at some of the analytics, and people are actually watching, commenting, responding. So, you know,
Or something my mom or something. It's
yeah.
our number one viewer.
Yeah, exactly.
Firefox.
You know, but it's good to see people responding to the information that we're sharing.
Yeah, David, I'm hearing not only from our current clients, past clients, family and friends, all that good stuff, but what I really like hearing is a lot of the networking agents we're dealing with or people that we don't really know and starting to see them comments and stuff coming in like that. It's awesome.
Yeah.
The reach is there.
I know. So let's keep it going. I know we all brought some great stuff to talk about today. I'm actually going to skip the market minute because it really hasn't changed over the last 2 weeks, right? Inventory is extremely low. You know, we're talking a couple hundred homes on the market in the entire county. Yeah. And but it's going to lead into a conversation later about, have we already seen the bottom? Right, and I'm going to give you guys 4 or 5 bullet points from an economic perspective where I believe maybe we have seen the bottom of the housing market here locally. But it is still expensive to buy a home, right? And we know that. So one of the things I wanted to share today is there are actually 5 cities in the United States where it is cheaper to buy than it is to rent. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering, you know, I'll ask you guys, do you know, without looking at my notes here, Ben?
This isn't just California. This is in the entire nation.
Across the United States. So, you know, the Bay
Metro areas.
Yeah, the Bay Area has one of the worst, rent to mortgage ratios. These are 5 cities in the United States where it is actually cheaper to own a home, pay a mortgage than it is to rent.
Detroit.
Not on the list.
New York?
No, that's opposite. Rents are going up in New York.
Suburbs of Chicago?
Yeah, so you're all hovering around, but let me just rattle them off real quick.
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
That's a good show. You watch Tulsa with Sylvester Stallone? Anyway, little realtor ADD kicking in. Memphis, Tennessee. Birmingham, Alabama.
Damn it, and that's on our list because we're going out there next month.
Great weather out there. Great weather.
Baltimore, right? Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and St. Louis.
Okay.
And actually, I'm looking at possibly buying a duplex in St. Louis.
What was the first one you said?
Memphis, Tennessee.
That's interesting.
The reason I said New York was because the small 1-bedroom condos out there that you can find between $400,000 and $600,000, I've seen the rent on those creep up close to $4,000 a month for those, $4,000 or $5,000. It's like a Santana Row property.
Yeah, but a mortgage on $500,000 right now, plus the HOA, plus the property taxes.
Because Birmingham, Alabama, you can buy a condo there for like $220,000.
Yeah,
and actually rent it for. Well, that's the whole reason why we're going out there is looking for some of those properties.
Well, and perfect example, St. Louis, Missouri.
Yep.
I have my eye on a duplex. Check this out: $70,000 for the duplex.
Oh.
The rent, but total rent, $1,450 a month.
Right.
2% of purchase price.
Yeah.
I mean, insane.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
Yeah. So anyway, there are cities out there, Bay Area, not one of them, but there are places out there where it is cheaper to buy than it is to rent. And I bring that up because for investors, right? I just mentioned St. Louis. If you want to become, it's monopoly, right? You got to, start out small and build as you go. St. Louis, $70,000 for a duplex that's getting you $1,400 a month in cash flow and about $1,000 a month net after sewer, property taxes, and property management. I mean,
well, as for those of our viewers and listeners who who are familiar with our wealth building seminars, we are completely revamping them, and this information is what we're going to be packaging back up and bring back to them. Where yes, there are great places in this nation to reinvest into real estate and get that hockey stick to where it's halfway up the hockey stick instead of all the way at the top, which we've seen here in California, if not coming down a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up too. I had a conversation actually the other day with my barber. I've come across different clients in the Los Gatos market, and I'll just use an example. $4 million home, and you put $1 million down on it, your mortgage right now is probably going to be close to $20,000 a month. Property taxes, all in. I've ran into clients out here in Los Gatos who, instead of purchasing that $4 million here, instead put their money in other homes throughout the United States, rent that same property for $8,000 a month. Then if anything breaks or if they need anything to be fixed, the owner takes care of it. So they're, in some situations, they're living for free here and getting paid from their other properties around the area.
Again, it goes down to what those needs and wants are, right? I mean, if you're a family with young kids in the school district and stuff, you might want the stability of owning your own property. But if you're younger and you can have a little bit of more pain or handle that more risk, I should say, then look at those opportunities.
I mean, does it even matter if you want to own your own property with a family if it costs $20,000 a month to live there? Like what I mean, what do you?
Depends on your budget, when you can afford.
Well, and not to mention, I don't want to be at the mercy of a landlord coming in and telling me, hey, you might, I have no control at that point. They can tell me to move out, sell, and if I want my kids who are stable in an environment, I mean, I'm going to want to own that. More so, right?
Back in Dubai when we used to live and rent everywhere, I've moved places about 7 times because we rent everywhere and people keep selling and buying quite often. So that stability, especially like growing up, is important, I think.
But to your point, the rental market right now, it's really on fire. I think we've talked about this before, and I know you're going to lead into this, but the peak of our market, we believe, was March of 2022 for the resale side of it. The rental side of it at that point, our partner company, Forbes Group Property Management, that has about 800-900 properties, had an inventory of around 35 vacancies, right? Now that the market shifted, they got like 4 vacancies because with the interest rates going up, to your point, people are sitting back saying, wait a minute, I can rent that house out for $10,000 a month instead of $20,000 for a mortgage payment, and I'm just going to sit back and wait until that bottom comes in or wherever that's at, right?
Yeah, no, and that's a great segue, right? I mean, we did start to see prices begin to fall in June of last year, right? So we get through June, now we're through January, we're here first week of February, and we're all seeing an increase in activity. And so I wanted to give, there are a lot of, and we all have these clients that say, well, I'm going to wait till the market crashes before I get into before I buy a house. Which is, we all know is insane. But here are a couple of economic indicators that we may be at the bottom. 25% increase in mortgage rate applications, right? We know they've been historically low over the last 6 months. Mortgage interest rates continue to move down over the last 4 months. Increased buyer traffic, open house traffic, and offers, right? Jeet just said before we got online, how many offers?
44.
44 offers on a house in
Fremont.
Yeah.
It's a very standard home, needs a lot of work. It was priced low to attract traffic, but I don't believe it was priced significantly low. And they still got 44 offers. I was surprised. I just texted wow to the listing
It goes
agent.
back to supply and demand. I mean, again, we have less than 600 single-family homes on a market in Santa Clara County that has 2 million people.
Yeah. And then Q4 of last year, this is nationwide, 42% of all transactions had seller concessions. That's a 10-year high, right? So we think we've peaked there. And then lastly, home builder sentiment improved for the first time in a full year. So, when the home builders are optimistic about, okay, let's go, inflation's in check, we can afford lumber, people are buying, rates are down. So their sentiment is improved as well. So, there is an argument to be made that, we have seen the bottom, and it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, our last dip was when we had the lockdown in March through May a couple years ago. We had a small dip, and then it shot back up again. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Have we seen the bottom in our area?
I hear what you're saying. I do. What really concerns me, though, is the overall global scenario, and we are going to be attached to it. We have a certain amount of resiliency to recessions and all those being here in Silicon Valley simply because supply and demand and everything else. But all it's going to take is a little bit of a blip of an increase of inventory to change these scenarios of having these 44 offers and stuff. What's that going to be? I don't know, because Silicon Valley still has great quality of life. We've got great work environments. I mean, everything is there to keep that moving forward. So, my gut is telling me I'm with you. We're going to all have activity anyways. But I'm sitting there going, man, inflate. I mean, I know we've had this greedflation, whatever you want to call it. But all the stimulus packages, all that stuff, we got to pay that back at a much higher rate than what we've been doing.
Yeah, and so, I've got a point and a counterpoint. So the point where I think we have hit bottom is Jeet's example, 44 offers. So that tells me if 40 more houses came up in that neighborhood, they get sucked up, right? Yep. But the counterpoint is, like you said, Mark, the overall health of the economy. Here's something that I read that I found is really interesting, and it may be a canary in the coal mine for what's ahead in 2023. Auto loan defaults are the highest they've been since 2009. Right, and so part of that is because we know used car prices went up, so the loans were a larger size, the interest rates have gone up. They say like the average car payment right now is between $700 and $1,000, and now we're starting to see people get laid off. Used car prices coming down, so now they're upside down on their cars, and now we're seeing that default, the largest since 2009.
Yes, and those are the indicators that worry me, right? It's interesting. New cars are actually coming down too. They're repricing Teslas.
Oh yeah.
Did you just buy a Tesla?
Both of them did.
I would like to quote that
I'm down 20 grand.
Yeah. Mine has not fallen.
Well, because they didn't drop the price of the S.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not drop the price of that one yet. But if they do, you just write it out.
You write it.
Yeah. That's where the concern is. So I guess, at the end of the day, though, it goes down to what's a consumer to do. Because we can't wait for bottom. Again, we're not going to know that until 3 months after we hit bottom, right? Yeah. So what does a consumer do?
Yeah.
And here are a few things that's different from 2008, right? Like in 2008, we saw, as soon as we hear recession and housing bubble, it automatically feels like the market's crashing. It reminds us of 2008. But here are a few things that were different back then and are different now. Before, there were like loose lending standards and oversupply of homes and overtapped equity. Whereas right now, I feel like there's strict lending practices. It's harder to get qualified for that home.
Sure.
Undersupply of homes, we talked about how much there's barely any inventory to go around for, 2 million population in Santa Clara County, and there's more equity in homes right now than ever before. So I think those factors still stand strong. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But as David mentions, I think a lot of the pain is behind us because inflation started to come under control. Affordability seems to come back up. People are jumping back in, trying to think of this as an early sign of a Fed U-turn. Where it might be the last chance to get that deal.
Well, what's interesting is unemployment rates are still crazy low. Even though you hear in the news all the bad stuff, right? Which is all the tech layoffs and things like that. I was with a client last week in Almaden, and he's got a bunch of tech buddies, and they're getting laid off left and right. And then he said most of my friends are and then next week I got another job.
They got rehired.
Somewhere else.
I agree with both you guys, and I do feel that, but I just hesitate to embrace that idea, not have a sense of caution of where we're going, right?
Absolutely.
It's interesting. You take a seller, you got 44 offers on your property. That seller hasn't given up too much of their equity, I'm sure, from where it was.
Yeah.
So we're very fortunate to sell real estate in this area, and our clients are very fortunate to be able to have the opportunity to buy them because long term we know it's the greatest investment that they've ever had.
And to my counterpoint, last week I placed an offer for a client we had been looking for a few weeks. He was very excited. He had this job that he's been working for a year. He thought it was very secure, and he was in a position to buy a home. An hour after we placed that offer, which was a winning offer, by the way, and he called me. He kept calling me, and I was in a meeting. And he called me, and he's like, "I got laid off. I need to rescind that offer right away." So I texted the listing agent, rescinded our offer, and it just, so people are getting laid off, and it's a serious thing.
Without a doubt, and again, that's where each one of our clients, we have to do that needs analysis and figure out what's the best way for them. And I asked that question earlier: what is a consumer to do? Listen to us, right? Let us advise you. Here we're here to educate you to be as smart as we are and educated as we are in this industry, so you can make the best decisions possible.
Absolutely.
There is no crystal ball with it. It's really an individual decision that you have to think hard about.
Well, yeah, and to your point, Mark, the listen to us. I'm very proud of our team because we do a really good job of laying out all of the options. and let the client or the consumer decide what works best for them,
Absolutely.
right? You know, never do we have our thumb on them and, you know, pushing them to one decision or another. And I can't tell you how many times that's come back to us in beneficial ways by them just saying, you know what, I'm glad I didn't buy it this time, or I'm glad I listened to you and sold it this time, you know, and that's how we get our referrals.
And I got to tell you, David, there's been times as well when we have actually emailed in writing a client telling them, we do not recommend you buying this property. Sometimes they listen to us, sometimes they don't.
Yeah,
but,
and then they do, you know, and then they don't listen, and then they come back and then they complain about the purchase.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah. No names.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I always tell people, I'm happy to sit down and do a consultation with you. You know, take a little bit of our time, give you the information you need to make an informed decision, whether you're ready to pull the trigger now, 6 months from now, or 2 years from now.
Yep.
You know, you need the information to get started, and you know, whatever the outcome is, you know, we're not tied to that outcome. You know, we're just committed to giving the best information that we can for our clients.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was gonna say you're pretty quiet over there, man.
Well,
He's just warming up his stash.
there's great information, but it's like you said, it's so interesting how, you know, we say buyers listen to us, but what they're addicted to and what they constantly look at every day, every week are these Zillow Zestimates.
Yeah, they're
you
all
know,
into it, sure, of
they
course.
pop online, they look at what their home's worth,
Yeah.
they try and, you know, this is the time to do it. Listen, at the end of the day, doesn't matter what we think it's worth, doesn't matter what an appraiser think it's worth, what that buyer is going to be paying for you at the time of the purchase, that's what's going to determine.
And, you know, and I'm okay with clients doing. I want them to be educated. I want them to see everything that's out there, right? We all know the challenges with Zillow's estimate or Redfin's estimate and stuff. I mean, they're just taking price per square foot in a certain quadrant. They're not looking at condition. They're not looking at, you know, telephone wires or any of that.
Especially
other
in
stuff.
an area like Los Gatos, where you have one home on the top of the mountain and one home on the bottom of the mountain.
Well, and not to mention too, some of those Zillow things aren't looking at in Los Gatos. You got Los Gatos schools and non-Los Gatos schools. We're literally across the street from each other, right? So, but I'm okay with having that knowledge as long as you know how to interpret it, and that's what we're here for, and to help that allow you to make that roadmap to make your decision.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, cool.
Well,
go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people were questioning over the last few weeks whether or not this John of a stash was going to be coming off. It's back, baby.
All right. First of all, it was a rigged election because if you look at our page,
The 7 votes.
no. More people on our Instagram page voted to shave your stash, but mysteriously, when you posted on your personal page, you barely.
I would like
eked out
to shout out the 112 people that said do not shave it.
Yeah, and
Listening in.
yeah.
Why don't you do it for charity, man?
Maybe we will coming up. Maybe Mustache March is like
Come on, man.
the mustache
There you go.
retreat march. But with the mustache comes another Mustache Minute.
Let's do it.
This might even be a hot take. All right, we're going to be talking about inspections. What should I get? How detailed should they be? How much should I be spending on them? As a buyer, again, when you go in for an inspection, you're going in with a contingency for the inspection. Now, whether or not they have the inspection, depending on how long they got the inspection done, I always recommend, peace of mind, get another general inspection. One thing to note with a general inspector, they are not licensed contractors, so they're not going to go into detail about every little thing. Even in the inspections, when you read them, they have titled, please hire a plumber, to go into further detail. With a general inspection, are always going to come supplemental inspections afterwards, whether it's a foundation inspection, if you go in for another roof inspection, a chimney inspection, the list goes on. But I always recommend buyers go into purchasing a home with at least $1,000 to $2,000 in mind to get those inspections done. That way, when you remove the contingency, you're telling the seller you were all in. At that time, if you find anything with the contingency, we can obviously negotiate price, come down and purchase price, or back out. But again, once the contingency is removed, you are all in on the property. Meaning, if you find something 6 months from then, it is buyer responsibility.
Yeah, so I love bringing that subject up because I think inspections are on both sides of the coin, right? I mean, a seller absolutely wants to get them up front. I know we'll have some sellers come to and say, well, why am I going to pay that $1,200 up front? The buyer should pay for that. No, 2 reasons, right? One, you want to know about any negative issues that's impacting your property before giving that power of knowledge to a buyer.
Yep.
Because if you don't do your inspections, you rely on that buyer, you have to give the buyer the contingency to do it. Buyer's going to do their inspections and they find a small little crack in the foundation that you could have easily taken care of with a $750 epoxy ejection and take it off the table. But no, once the contract is accepted, prior to the contract being accepted, the seller's in the driver's seat. As soon as that contract's accepted, it's the buyer that's in the driver's seat. The buyer's the only one that has the right to walk away. The seller doesn't, right? So the more information, and buyers, and the way I look at it is, if the seller used a reputable inspection company, I'm generally okay accepting their inspections. But I do like the idea of, you always want to get that back.
Well, and that's why I mentioned too, depending on the time frame. So especially in the pandemic, what we've seen are these homes being on the market for 30, 40 days with the owners still living inside of it. If they get an inspection 90 days, 60 days to 90 days before you get in contract, think about getting another inspection. You know how we just had the biggest storm I think San Jose's seen in the last decade.
161 years.
Yep.
In 161 years. So let's say, they got an inspection 7 days before that storm hit. Get another inspection. You don't know what that family's doing when they're moving their stuff out, when they're pulling stuff out from the walls, when they're, peace of mind, people. Yep. It's $2,000 of your time to make sure you're living in a comfortable spot.
All right. We got a few minutes left. Do you want?
We do. Do you got something?
I have a couple things that kind of
right.
tied in, and these are just kind of fun, little tidbits here. So where people moved in 2022, right? So where do you guys think the number one place in the union that people moved to that had the highest net increase in population?
In the
United
United
States.
States.
Yeah, in the United States.
Well, I think I already know, so I'll let you guys guess.
God,
Number one state that had the highest net increase in population.
I'm just going to ride this horse.
Let's do it.
Austin, Texas.
State.
Well, Austin's not a state, but some people in Texas may think it's
Yes,
a separate state.
yes.
Oklahoma?
It's Florida.
Florida.
Florida has the highest. Texas is second. Okay. Now, something I found interesting that goes into this next report I have is, and the number one state that had the highest net loss in population, surprise, surprise,
California.
Yeah, it makes sense.
California had the
Good.
highest.
The
had
less
highest
people
amount.
here, the
Which
better.
actually, it was more people moving out of California than were moved into Florida.
This is funny you say that.
Okay.
Since the pandemic,
Yep.
San Jose has jumped to the rankings back to number 28 for the most time sat in traffic, and San Francisco County is all the way up to number 7.
I believe that.
Yeah, traffic is gnarly.
They say on average you sit 3 days in traffic.
every
year.
Yeah. COVID's gone.
Yep.
It's gone.
So then to tie this into what cities in America are where Americans are happiest, okay, in America. What I found interesting about this report, the top 10 cities, 6 of them were in California. The number one state people are moving to is Florida. Florida didn't make it on the list.
Tell me Birmingham, Alabama did.
No.
So are all the sad people moving to Florida?
And what I found is there's 2 spots in Texas on here, but the areas in Texas are not the areas that people are moving into Texas. So it's kind of interesting, people moving there, but they're not the happiest. So the happiest, Sunnyvale, California is the number one happiest city in America. Wow. Sunnyvale, California.
It was Fremont last year.
And let me just tell you real quick, because we'll mark where's this information coming from. There was 3 main scores that they looked at. Personal finance score, they looked at any 100,000 percent of individuals earning $100,000 or more. Well-being score, medical.
How about how happy the wives were? Happy wife, happy life,
yeah.
buddy.
Yeah, I mean that.
Okay. Quality of life.
There you go.
Marriage rate. Average commute time, violent crime, all those things they took into consideration. So it's interesting. Sunnyvale's number 1, Arlington, Virginia's number 2, Bellevue, Washington's 3, Fremont, California's 4. Frisco, Texas 5, Plano, Texas 6. They don't have an increase in populations there. Roseville, California 7, San Jose's 8,
Wow.
Santa Clarita's 9, and Irvine, California's 10.
Interesting.
Do you think it has anything to do with what's provided around these cities?
Of course it is.
Well, yeah,
It's
it's
quality of life,
everything.
right?
Yeah.
And
Because it doesn't really come down to how much though.
What I like is what this brings to the table. We're so in our bubble here in like Los Gatos, Campbell, Santa Clara County and stuff, right? And a lot of times when we do our wealth building seminars, we talk to people about, listen, you have so much equity that's built up. Take that money and go to another state. But this continues to show why California is an incredible place to live and invest.
Yeah.
Long term.
Yep.
Long term.
All right.
I'm done.
I've got one thing, and maybe we'll wrap it up with this. Is it's actually like a consumer alert. Whether you're in the housing market or not, we've all, Mark and I especially, have been around long enough where you see these scams and trends that bilk money out of consumers or put them in a financial position where it prevents them from becoming homeowners. There's a company trending right now called National Debt Relief.
Oh, geez.
It's National Debt Relief, like .org or .com, and it comes across as like it's almost a government program if you have over $10,000 in debt,
Yep.
and it's not debt consolidation.
Offer and compromise?
Yeah, it's like offer and compromise. And so they say, yeah, I saved $70,000 on my credit cards or $50,000. So a couple of things. One, this absolutely hammers your credit score, right? Because it becomes like Mark said, offer and compromise. So what happens is on your trade line on your credit report, it says debt settled for less than amount owed, kills your score. So that's the first thing. And then so plan on 2 years before that has a neutral effect on. And then secondly, you have to pay a fee to these people once they've settled your debt. And so typically your total savings, if you're lucky, is only about 25%. And if you read the fine print, it says like on average, they've been able to save 25%. So if you got $10,000 in debt, okay, you saved $2,500, but now your credit's ruined. Right? You can never go back to that credit card company again, even once you fix your credit. Mm-hmm. And guess what? If you thought about buying a home in the next 1, 2, 3 years, you're probably not going to be able to. So, on that stuff, be very careful, whether it's debt consolidation, offer and compromise. If it sounds too good to be true, right? It probably is.
Well, and it's that whole thing about protecting your credit and your credit FICO number, right? Because all that impacts it, and that impacts what you're repaying in interest rates.
Yeah.
For whatever reasons, Dee Dee and I went out and got a fifth wheel this weekend. And we didn't know if financing or paid off. But the interesting thing is, I always thought my credit was pretty good. I'm around a 775, right? Well, the gal, when we were doing the paper, she goes, well, we need to put your wife first because hers is 850. I'm like, you got to have 850 to get your 6.99 financing on an RV?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. But it is very important because the higher
credit scores,
higher credit score, the less you're going to pay on that interest rate.
Yep, right? Absolutely. And again, if you're thinking about buying a house, you need to reach out to us so we can get you in touch with the lender, so we can look at your credit, so we can plan before you go out of the house.
Especially right now. Your taxes are April 14th. If you have any thought about getting into the market, talk to your financial advisor right now before submitting any paperwork and go over what needs to be done.
That is true, especially if you're self-employed or a business owner. There may be some adjustments you need to make on your taxes in order to show enough income to actually qualify for a home. So with that said, Season 2, Episode 3, all things real estate.
And we got to think about, how do we go viral? How do we take this viral?
We're already viral.
Come
what
on,
are you talking
viral?
about?
You know how many people are saying who you
Well,
are?
Ben does have a virus, but yeah. I think the penicillin helped.
All right, I have a viral mustache.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right,
No,
guys.
hey, like, share, comment. Love you guys. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.